Ni hao. This is Group 1, Project 1 for Business 380. Today we're going to be hearing from Matt Caballero, Luangquo Prince, Rebecca Sullivan, Solofano Min Jana Hari Odin Ravel Oja Anna, Aina Rocco Tori Manana, and Randy Whittle. Our group decided to go with China, so we are going to be discussing that. So as we see here, we're going to be talking about the Hofstede cultural dimension. Blue is China and purple is the United States. So as we see here, China has a higher percentage and it shows that they are the inequalities are acceptable there. The subordinate superior relationship tends to be polarized, and then in no defense against power abuse by superiors. The individualism, as we see, the United States is scored higher, which shows that China is a highly cultivist culture where people act in interest of the group, not necessarily of themselves. In-group considerations affect hiring and promotions with closer in-groups, such as family, are getting preferential treatment. Whereas relationships with colleagues are cooperative for in-groups. They're cold or even hostile to outgroups. Next, we'll look at the masculinity. As we can see, it's pretty even or close to it. Uncertainty avoidance, we can see that the United States are more uncertain and China is more of a go-getter, They don't really care for what's about to happen. For the next one, we see that long-term orientation. China has goals, and it's long-term goals, and it'll take time, but they're willing to keep going for it. They won't stop at any cost. Whereas the United States is a bit more slower pace. They're like, let's live for the now. Next, we can see the indulgence that the United States, again, is for the now. They don't like to wait. They like to help themselves, basically. Whereas China likes to take a longer time getting there and not doing things just for oneself, but for the group.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. So let's talk about the business cultural differences between the US and China. Here in the US, we're a lot more precise and direct and clear with our communication and what exactly we want. In China, they're going to be very much more indirect, and we're going to have to guess what exactly they're thinking and how they feel about it. Also in the US, we can be confrontational and things will be up for debate and we can openly disagree. In China, they want to avoid all that. It's seen as a negative. Also, we are very punctual. We have a lot of timelines we want to keep and want to just move on from one thing to the next. In China, they're a lot more flexible and more open for different timelines, and the negotiation process just takes a lot longer. And so these things all translate into when we're actually negotiating and having a bargain with China. And so they have a lot of different strategies. They're very shrewd and natural negotiators. It's part of their everyday life. And they will expect that they're going to be able to get a lot of concessions or at least some concessions out of us. Also, they really value their long-term relationships. So the bargaining process can take a lot longer than it would here in the US because they're going to want to develop some type of a strong relationship with you. Also, they tend to use a lot of deceptive and pressure techniques. They can lie about different things in the negotiation process, and they can pressure you. If they find out that we're on a deadline, they're gonna, right before the deadline hits, ask for a lot of big concessions, possibly to just try to get us to give them an even better deal. Also, they think a lot differently to discuss issues simultaneously. They'll just jump around the proposal, and then once they get it as they hear everything, then they'll start to really think about it. And there's not going to be one leader. They make all their decisions as a group. So to help us prepare and get the upper hand in our negotiations, we should have a list of acceptable concessions. That way we know exactly what we're willing to give up. We should also be patient and focus on building relationships. Don't get into that fast pace negotiation that we like to have here in the US. And don't take offense to any deceptive strategies. They don't mean it to be a personal attack on us. Also, maybe the most important thing is to have a talented and trusted intermediary. They can translate the language, they can translate the culture, they can help us with the different nonverbal cues so we better can understand the Chinese negotiators and what exactly they're feeling, what exactly they want. And so I'll turn the time over to Prince, who's going to talk about more the government and how it's run.
Okay, so thank you, Matt, for taking us through the different cultural. Okay, so thank you, Matt, for taking us through the different cultural US, and also the bargaining strategies between the two countries. Mine is little going to be the type of government structures and the current country leadership found in China. In China, there are structures of leadership which current run in the country and its leadership models, and some of those are the government. In this kind of structure, they are under the rules of the Communist Party and governs according to the democratic centralism. Also, most power is given to the paramount leader known as the Chief Secretary, Chairman, and President Xi Jinping. Their government is also divided among the legislative, executive, and judiciary and military branches. And these government's positions are kind of like similar to the ones in the United States. So China shares something similar to the United States. They exercise or they have a role of presidency, a role of chairman, a role of a secretary, and executive and judiciary like that. And also in China, you see what it's called the political development affecting business. In this kind of system or in this kind of model, often at times the Chinese government are allowed to interact with the people. They do this because it gives them the ability to exercise government files, which enables them with the option to sue if relating to contracts or compensations of sorts. Like if there's anything relating to contract or compensations of sorts, this gives them this kind of interaction between the people, gives them the access to the government access to files. And also the state federal government has been restricting imports from China and also discouraging other countries from doing business with China. Many more foreign companies now seek risk with China, which cause the large portion of China's revenue to be lost, and that is very, very true. You know, the government have a lot of restrictions on importations, and that actually affect cause a lot of discouragement between countries that want to intertrade with China, and it affects many foreign companies, and it puts a lot of foreign companies at risk, and this will cause a large portion of Chinese revenue to be lost, like I've stated out here boldly. Okay, and secondly, we also have China Economic Freedom Index. Okay, you can look at the index, the China's freedom component here, and then compare it to the world component average. From the look of things, you see that from the report, but it's showing that China economic freedom status stand at 58.4 score. They are ranked 100 in the world regarding the freedom of its economy.
When starting a business in China, there are a few regulatory items to look at. 3 areas that I'm going to mention are starting a business, paying taxes, and contract enforcement. Starting a business in China should be a simple process. In our research, we found the location is very important as China's free trade zones, so it's something that should be taken into account when choosing a location in China. Paying taxes is also something that is important before creating or launching a business in that beautiful country. And the last one is the contract enforcement that has 3 separate subcategories, which are composed of time, cost, and quality of judicial processes index. China is in a number of different free trade agreements. They have agreements with Pakistan, Chile, New Zealand, Singapore, Peru, Costa Rica, Iceland and Switzerland, Korea, and Australia. The New Zealand, Iceland, Switzerland, and Australian free trade agreements mainly limit or eliminate tariffs between the countries and China. And the import tariffs, there are a few product categories that have especially high or low tariffs when importing to China. Cereals and preparations, sugars and confectionery, beverages and tobacco have high tariffs. Petroleum, chemicals, wood, paper, and electrical machinery all have low tariffs. These low tariffs will allow us to limit our importing costs, and is a sign that China is really looking to acquire these types of products from importing because they made the tariff so.
All right, so now we're going to go over a few things regarding foreign direct investment. A few things about this foreign direct investment is just investment made by a firm or an individual in one country to another business interest located in another country. With China, there's a few things. One is they've had really good constant progression, which is really good. We can see that they've been opening their foreign direct investment up, while there are still strong restrictions, such as education. You have to meet very specific parameters. If you don't meet those, there's no way around that. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the GDP growth rate. We can see that the GDP growth rate from 2010 to 2019 has dropped from 10.82 to 5.82. This isn't a good thing. Businesses can struggle entering into a market like that. There was a drop. It did spike right here from 2019 to 2020. It dropped. There was a subsequent spike. That's probably just due to COVID. They're just trying to catch up from that, and so we'd expect this to continually slowly go down. Another thing is inflation rate. This is good. They stay below the world average. That's a good thing. 2015 to 2020 is a low of 1.44, high of 2.9. We'd expect it, as you can see on the chart right there, it should hover around 2% continually. This is like most developed nations. The next thing is the lending interest rate. This is just the rate that banks charge for you to borrow money. Pros, constant rates. It's always hovered around 5%, just a little bit lower than that. This gives a little bit of certainty for businesses. They could probably expect it to stay around this rate, which is really good if you're opening a business. Last thing to take a look at is the yuan versus the dollar. Looking at this chart, we can see over time this has increased in value, and so that's also a good thing. That just means that the dollar is getting stronger.
Our three product suggestions are: first, the solar-powered scooters. In China, electricity is scarcely accessed, and that made productivity low in most electric products. Electric scooter powered by solar, green, and renewable energy will be a solution to this issue. Second, medical technology. China's population count 1.4 billion. 30% of these are elderly people. The needs of pharmaceutical product innovation is highly required. They need an affordable medical care to make ends meet. And third, it is baby formula. Since the law against having more than one child is lifted, the demand of the baby formula has skyrocketed. China make up to 1/3 of the baby formula market.
So as we see, there are a lot of things that we need to continue to study and continue to look out for as we look into doing business with China.